Hey, what is up, my guys? Today we're going to be going over Riftbound expected value. And we're going to cover a couple different sets during this just to talk about expected value and how it kind of works in TCGs. Because it's something that I got asked the other day about, what's the EV of ripping Riftbound? Is it actually good for someone who's investing or collecting? So we'll go through that a little bit today. What is EV? It's your expected value, the average return slash value you expect opening a booster box. Um, this is just, it's a very complicated formula just because of pull rates and, what's the price of everything. Showing right here is a Gaussian bell curve. Now, this one is if everything is equal, everything, you'll have your three different standard deviations of 68, 98, and then 99.5% of where you'll lie for your expected value. Obviously your middle 50%, you'll land directly in the middle, and that will be your expected value. TCGs aren't like that, though. It's not a nice bell curve. It generally favors going to be on the lower side of life for things just because of how the nature of a booster box works, where in the edge cases, you'll get that once in a lifetime hit out of a box. So, just want to kind of give a little overview of that. I know this is very, very technical in a sense, but there is a calculator, and there are calculators online. I referenced them on the first slide, and that's where I use a lot to derive these prices. And a lot goes into this formula, and so let's go into them. Pokemon. What is the EV of opening Pokemon? Um, I took a couple snapshots here. This is Perfect Order, Chaos Rising, and Surging Sparks. And then I have this ratio. So I pulled all of this data this morning on July 23rd, where it's the booster box market price from TCG Player. And then I took the EV calculations for it below it. So you can see the ratio is going to be your TCG Player market price divided by your booster box price. Now, this ratio, we'll go a little bit in depth of this ratio then. If I'm paying 174 for a Perfect Order booster box and I decide to rip it, on average, the card value I will get out of it is 62.85. So we have a ratio of 36 or 0.136, 0.36 or 36%. And then you have Chaos Rising, 0.31, 31%, and 0.29 for Surging Sparks or 29%. That's how much of the value you're going to retain from opening the box. This is rather low. That means if you have only a very slim chance of actually getting money return on this, and that's the big hit. It's more of a gamble. So let's use another TCG for example. One Piece, much higher. These are way better ratios. You love to see this in a game. So OP 14, 15, 16. Once again, you can see the booster box market price compared to the EV of ripping one of them. So with these greater ones, that means you do get higher returns when you open a booster box. It doesn't feel like you're lighting your money on fire. And this is just something that affects everyone. I'll go into a little more detail on later slides about who a good EV actually helps. But I think it's important that we do see these ratios. I do think it's important that we go a little bit into the math of everything about seeing where not just Riftbound but other games are. So that takes us to my next slide of Riftbound itself. You can see Origins. On average, if I were to rip a booster box of Origins, I will retain almost full value if I decide to sell the cards. Now, originally, when I ran some of these calculations, I went with TCG lowest for Pokemon and Riftbound, but unfortunately, I can't do that with um, One Piece, so I had to go with market price instead, just because of the day that's available online for these types of things. Spirit Forge, a lot lower. That's about the ratio you would have gotten from an OP box, and then back again with Unleash. Unleash is kind of unique because it's much lower in price, but you still have about the same market return or your EV for ripping one of those. It's Origins is a very significant outlier where if someone asks me what box they should open, I'm going to point them to the one with the highest EV, which in this case is Origins. Um, so we'll go into at a quick glance. Once again, Pokemon, very low EV to rip. Very top heavy in the single chase cards. You see that in a lot of our current sets in Pokemon. Maybe Pitch Black, Chaos Rising, Perfect Order, especially Phantasmal Flames. These sets are very loaded where you either get no money at all from opening a booster box or you get the top chase card. One Piece, it's a very consistent between all their boxes. They have a very consistent ratio, which is very glad to see. But it is also still very widespread. Same thing goes for Riftbound, where you have very, very high end with very, very low chance of hitting it. But even taking that into consideration for both of those games, you still retain a lot of your value. Your expected value does stay relatively the same. And Origins, once again, very widespread, and Origins is just thriving in Riftbound. It is a set that I can't talk about enough. It is hyper playable. It has great chases. It is what a base set booster box for any TCG should be striving for. So let's talk about a little bit who does EV benefit. We'll start with the collector. It is a store of value. I know if I'm going to buy or rip a box, I am going to be getting money saved. I will be getting a money, not money return, but I'm not just lighting it on fire. Where if I go and rip a $200 booster box of pitch black right now, I'm basically lighting my money on fire if I don't pull the top chase card. It doesn't feel like that in other games, and that goes for a lot of games. May that be Riftbound, One Piece, or even Magic the Gathering. You can buy a play bundle for Magic the Gathering and leave with a lot of expected value from that. Thing about EV games, if there is a high EV, there's also a very high chance that there's a high rarity chase card in it. And there's one thing that collectors love, it's prestige and rarity. It's something to flex, it's something they can show off, it's something that they have a chase for. Um, and it's just all around great for them. The last bullet point there is, funding future collections. If I rip a booster box of Riftbound and I don't get the chase, okay, well, I can resell a lot of those cards back or just trade them for the card I want. It's not just straight up losing all my money every time I decide to rip a box. Now I'm saying you guys clicked on this video, you're an investor. EV matters to you. It's positive ROI potential. Investors can open or hold products with a reasonable expectation of financial gains. Once again, same thing for investors and collectors. I can open a booster box and there's a good chance that I'm going to profit off of it. Liquidity and demand. High EV booster boxes are typically backed by strong market demand. Uh, one of the things in the future, say a booster box is out of print. We'll use Pokemon for example. Evolving Skies. It when it initially released, it had such a high EV of you ripping $100 booster box, and at that time, Moonbreon was about $1,000. So you had a very high EV, and you saw there was insane demand. It was a very liquid asset compared to some of the other sets during that era that just no one wanted. Um, so it only benefits an investor in the long run by heavily investing into a high EV versus a low EV set. And you can set pick. That's one of the things that, maybe in the future we can go over in Riftbound. Set picking is totally a thing, and that's totally okay. And it's something that I have started doing in Pokemon within the last year that I can't recommend more. Last point is downside mitigation. A healthy EV protects capital. Once again, if it's a good set that people want, odds are it's not going to be going down in price and it will be appreciating in the long run. And then players. This one, I can have an argument for and against. Some of the art points towards high EV, trade equity. When I rip a booster box, obviously, if I'm a player, I want to be hitting the cards I want for my deck. Oh, crap. I didn't get the cards I want. Well, the EV of this is I can trade a lot of those cards in to get the ones I want. That kind of goes into recouping costs or subsidizing your hobby. Meta relevant cards command higher prices when formats shift or cards rotate. A high EV card pool ensures player can resell the cards. This is very important for players. You're not going to be playing the same deck all the time. You're not going to be playing the same play style. So being able to sell your cards and resell it and get what you want, because in the end, for collectors and players, this is a hobby, and you're just pouring money into something that you enjoy. So if there's a way to mitigate how much money you're putting into the hobby to continue playing it, it always helps. It's never a bad thing. Does EV matter? It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. High EVs are desirable to open by collectors investors trying to get lucky. There's strong correlation between game piece strength and high EV. And then below, like I said, the self-fulfilling prophecy of social impact. If everyone else is ripping a product I have to do the same. It's the one of the pure definitions of FOMO. Everyone else is doing it. Everyone's talking about it. I have to join it too. You know, what does that lead to? A supply drain engine. By the time that set's even out of print, the supply is much lower than a low EV set because it was constantly being ripped. Okay? Say it's out of print, it's out of play rotation. Is there still demand for that set? If there's a chase card in there, it will be ripped post rotation and post when it's out of printing. And at that point, it only just keeps getting higher because no new supply, it's a deflationary asset. Only new supply is going to be added to the market, or no supply is going to be added to market. So your supply goes down, and is demand going to go up? Maybe, maybe not. But in the end, what does this all lead to is sealed becomes a luxury. It becomes a very luxurious item. And once again, having an Evolving Skies booster box in my collection, I have a couple of them. It is the EV over time of Evolving Skies has actually gone down, but the price of my sealed, once again, you're on my video right now because you're an investor. One of the things you love to see is your sealed investment going up. It is the long-term goal for something like this. So yes, over time it is expected your EV of a set will go down. That's not anything shocking, but it will go down quicker on a set that starts with a low EV. So putting your money in something that will become a luxury item is definitely something you want to do. Um, you know, take everything I say with a grain of salt. I think there's a lot of argument points to and for this, but I do want to hear you guys' opinions. So I do want to say thank you. Thank you for, taking time to listen to this one. I would appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Do we want to see more content like this, or do you want to see me going over content about, top chases or anything? I do appreciate the feedback and, what you guys want to see going forward. For now, though, peace out, guys.